Welcome to All About Bankruptcy.
Welcome everyone to episode 2, chapter 7 versus chapter 13, choosing the right bankruptcy option. Now, chapter 7 and chapter 13 offer two different roads to financial freedom. Luke Homen walks you through the differences on how which one might fit your situation and what unexpected benefits each path offers. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. It's an important distinction between the two.
I'm telling you right now, I have zero idea between the two, and I'm glad you're here, sir.
Just funny. So we talked last episode about it was a good 5 years before I took my first bankruptcy case, and
Right.
I'd been an attorney for 5 years, and so I interviewed for this job. We're not going to get too off the rails, but and the job's like, well, we're going to do some bankruptcy. I'm like, I don't even know what the difference between chapter 7 and chapter 13 even is. And the reality is, most people don't. Most attorneys don't.
No. Listen, here we are, and I'm glad you do, because this is going to be enlightening for me, and I'm sure the people that are watching. So right off the bat, what is the biggest difference between chapter 7 and chapter 13 bankruptcy con, sir?
The biggest difference is how long you're going to be in it and what you're going to have to pay. All right. So chapter 7 is what most people traditionally think of as bankruptcy. You file the case, you don't pay your creditors any money through the bankruptcy, and then it ends a few months later. Chapter 13 is more of a structured repayment plan. You're usually in it for 60 months, 5 years, and you're using the court system to repay your creditors in a way that's going to protect you and benefit you a lot, while also getting the creditors some money. So length and payments, that's the high level.
Is one better than the other in your opinion, or do you think this is something that's a case by case, like based on the needs of the client?
Absolutely case by case. But let me tell you, about 75% of the cases we file are chapter 7. So chapter 7 is going to be the more common of the two chapters, because more often people are coming in and they're just saying, hey, I'm broke. I got credit card debt, medical debt, repo debt, whatever. I just need out, right? And so it's going to be more common. But chapter 13 is more powerful. We have more tools. We can do more things. It's just you're going to make 5 years worth of payments. The other thing to realize is if you're a high income person, and that's a long conversation there, but a high income person can't do a chapter 7. There are income limits on who can file a chapter 7 bankruptcy. So sometimes we choose chapter 13 because it's the right chapter, and sometimes we have no choice. We have to do a chapter 13 because you're a high earner.
Based on your practices, knowledge, and expertise, do you ever kind of talk to a person about let's say they come in with chapter 7, do you say you should do chapter 13 and vice versa?
Yeah.
You just go with the flow?
No, absolutely. And that's, we talked about doing a consultation, and that's why it's so important, because there might be things you don't realize. Why would you know? Right? We got to talk through it. We got to figure out, okay, well, this might benefit you more if you were in a 13. This might benefit you more in a 7. Is chapter 13 payments even a realistic option? Let's talk about what it would cost in your specific case, because everything is case by case. So we got to talk it through.
So we got to kind of touch on it just a moment ago, but how does someone's income and asset situation affect which chapter they even qualify for?
It's huge. So the first answer, income, is if you are a high earning individual, you may not be eligible for a 7. But also on the reverse, to qualify for chapter 13, you have to have a regular monthly income. Now, that's kind of a low bar, right? Most people either get government benefits or a monthly income, or they work for a living. But if you don't have income, you can't file a chapter 13 even if you want to. Mm-hmm. On the other side of chapter 13, you have to file a 13 and not a 7 if you have a really high income. Now, to touch briefly on the other half of your question, which is assets, sometimes you file chapter 13 because you don't want to lose an asset that you would lose in a chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 13 is flexible in a way that chapter 7 isn't.
Okay, so what type of debts are like typically erased through chapter 7, just a chapter 7?
So chapter 7, we're generally dealing with credit cards, loans, medical debt, vehicle repossessions, old tax debt is something we often deal with there. But I like to call these sort of your everyday regular debts. These are called your unsecured debts. Chapter 7 eliminates your unsecured debts. Chapter 13, we can deal with other types of debt, what we call secured debts and priority debts, and have options for dealing with those that offer a lot greater flexibility.
So I kind of asked you the question, but this is kind of a little more, it's kind of more centralized. What, in your opinion, when would Chapter 13 be a better choice, even if someone qualifies for a Chapter 7? When would Chapter 13 be the choice they should go with?
So we've got two main reasons why you would choose the Chapter 13, just to kind of, even if you're eligible for a 7. The first is if you're facing a foreclosure, and we'll probably talk a whole episode about that at some point.
Yes.
Foreclosures can be stopped with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So here's the easiest way to think of it, right? The bank is coming and they want $12,000 right now. And if you don't give them that $12,000, they're taking your house and you're out on the streets. Well, a Chapter 13 is more powerful than the foreclosure. It's more powerful than the state court system. So the Chapter 13 says, stop, Mr. Creditor. We're going to pay you that same $12,000, but we're going to give the person filing bankruptcy, called the debtor, we're going to give them 60 months to do it. $12,000 today, that's a lot. Take $12,000, you break it out over 5 years, that's a lot more affordable. So what this does is it gives folks an opportunity to still be paying the debt, but to pay it in a way that allows them to stay in their home, and the creditor still gets their money, but now we've stopped that foreclosure. So that's a huge reason why people choose 13 when they're eligible for 7, is to keep their home. The best fit for somebody is really somebody who's had something tough happen in their life, right? They lost their job, they went through a divorce, death of a family member. Those things can cause you to miss mortgage payments, right? And now you don't have the money to pay it.
Absolutely.
But given time, they can make it right, right? They can work a few extra hours, they can spend a little less money, they can take 5 years and sort of pay their way back to good status. So that's a major reason why we file 13. The other major reason why people file 13 is to keep things that they would lose in a 7.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who would otherwise be able to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So what am I talking about here? Chapter 7 is called a liquidation. Each state has their own list of things that you get to keep as part of your fresh start. Your home, your car, your clothes, right? And that's going to be different state by state, how the nuances of that work. But here's a great example. I had a client, he inherited a boat from his mom. And this was something he could not lose. It was too emotionally important. It was the last thing he had from mom. But if we filed a Chapter 7, that was going to get auctioned off and the money was going to go to creditors. So instead, we filed a Chapter 13. The boat was worth about $20,000. So in his Chapter 13, he had to pay his creditors $20,000 over 5 years. He had a lot more debt than that, a lot more. But he was able to keep the family boat by paying the creditors what they would have gotten in Chapter 7 liquidation. The creditors got the money, he got the priceless to him family heirloom. So other things that you might think of that you would want to keep, maybe it's minerals, maybe it's a rental home that you have, maybe it's a fancy car. Sometimes people have things that are worth more than them to the monetary value, but they would lose in Chapter 7. And so they say, you know what, for me, it's worth paying something extra and keeping that thing. And the Chapter 13 offers flexibility in a way that Chapter 7 just doesn't.
This is a sidebar, but it came into my head, and like we have you here for a reason, and I think it's good that when somebody knows what they're talking about. Let me ask a question. What the whole entire concept of credit and like the history behind it, does the logic make sense to you? The whole business of credit and creditors and debt and collecting and credit scores and stuff like that. Do you accept it? Is it a racket? Is it a conspiracy?
No, and I think bankruptcy is a central part of it. But let's start with just your concept of credit. So I have a house, I have a mortgage. I could never save up enough cash to buy that house. Or when I bought my car, I did not have enough money to buy that car outright. So I need a loan. So for me, I'm going to pay that debt in full. Eventually, I did pay off my car and now I own it in full, but I needed credit to be able to do that. Well, what is a credit score? A credit score is a way of figuring out, is this person a good person to loan money to? And that's complicated. Have you been paying your debts? Do you owe lots of money? Have you been making wise financial decisions? And again, like we talked about, that is all a formula that we can maximize for you. But I think we need all of these concepts. But also central to the system is bankruptcy. If we don't have an escape valve, we're going to have people who are essentially going to want to give up on life, or they're going to give up on borrowing money or working. You know, if you're being garnished endlessly with no way out forever, maybe you just give up on working. Maybe you go live off the grid. Maybe you take cash for the rest of your life illegally, right? Instead, we need a way for people to get help uh, when life didn't turn around right. And on the other side of it, the creditors, they get to make billions and trillions of dollars in interest. So
Right.
they're really not losing out here. Like, make no mistake that the creditors are not the victims. Bankruptcy is the escape valve. It's the way for people when things didn't go right. Nobody sets out to buy a house or a car or a loan with the intent of not paying it. Everybody,
Absolutely.
I guess there's a sociopath in the world, right? I shouldn't say everybody. The great 99.9% of people,
Absolutely.
we take out debt fully with the intent to pay it. But then
Yes.
sometimes life happens. The divorce,
Mm.
the job loss, the reduction in pay, the loss of a family member, the sudden illness. Like, the sad part about being a bankruptcy attorney is we hear all the sad stories. And
Wow.
that's why people are here. It's the sad stories. It's not, I bought shiny fancy things I couldn't afford at the time. It's, I had all the intentions in the world and then life happened.
Do you have to have some kind of empathy to be in the position that you're in? Do you look at it more as a business, or did you learn how to be empathetic based on different situations you've dealt with? Because you're dealing with
Yeah,
people, you're dealing with families.
I think to be a good attorney, you have to, bankruptcy or other ways. If you're dealing with, people don't come to lawyers, most from my experience, because they want to be here, right? I always joke that nobody
Mhm.
wants to hire me. No, nobody wants to be my client, whether it's divorce or family law or guardianship or bankruptcy. People are here because things didn't go right and now they need help. And I think to be an attorney representing real people, you have to have people skills. Now, if you just want to go work for the government or work for Discover Card, you probably don't need any people skills, right?
Right, right, right.
But if you're going to represent actual humans, you have to be able to listen to their stories and tell them it's going to be okay and tell them there's a way out and have that be true.
Absolutely. We kind of talked about assets, but how can Chapter 13 protect those valuable assets? You talked about home, you talked about car, but how can that specific chapter help with that?
Yeah, those things are all hugely important in case by case. And we've got to sit down and sort through it. So to just jump on one thing we haven't talked about yet that you just mentioned, let's talk about cars.
Yeah.
Same thing with a house. If you're behind on car payments, you could actually use a Chapter 13 to restructure and rehabilitate those car payments. But also, and this is a very real thing for people who are lower income, oftentimes people buy cars at really, really high interest rates. There
Mhm.
are lots of car lenders, I'm not going to name them, but you probably know who they are, right? Where they start people at 19%, 21%. You go to Toyota with good credit and you might be able to get 3% financing or sometimes 0%. You go to Car Corner guy and you're paying 21% interest, the exact same car is going to cost you twice as much money because you had bad credit. Okay, so this
Mm.
is super cool in Chapter 13. We can actually lower those interest rates down if they're exorbitant, if they're too high, right? So
Wow.
let's say you come in with 23% interest, 15% interest, something like that. It's complicated. It changes all the time, but we can actually go to the bankruptcy court and say, that's absurd and that's unfair. And there is a way that we can actually forcibly lower those interest rates down. So sometimes that's one of the reasons we file 13 is we say, you love your car, you want to keep it, but you're being taken advantage of. Let's see if a Chapter 13 can make that part better.
Off the top of your head, give the people at home what's maybe some benefits of Chapter 13 they might not know about.
Here's a cool one. You can actually lose your professional license if you're not paying taxes. All right. So this isn't just lawyers, nurses, car salesmen, doctors. I've honestly represented all of those people. Just because you're in a fancy profession doesn't mean you take good care of your money, right? Doesn't mean that life doesn't happen. When you go into Chapter 13, we can take what we call your priority tax debt, the tax debt that can't be dealt with any other way, the tax debt that maybe is causing you to lose your license. And we can, again, pay that out over 5 years. And bankruptcy is more powerful than somebody trying to take away your license. And so we say, all right, Mr. Tax Commission, you're still going to get your money, but my guy gets to work. He still gets to be a nurse. He still gets to sell cars. And I mean, how else would you ever pay that debt back if you don't even have your license anymore? So super powerful.
Good stuff. So if someone isn't sure about what path is right for them, can you tell them what is the best first step?
The best first step is to call the attorney. It just is. Bankruptcy is amazing and powerful, but it's also a bit complicated under the hood, right? And so you just need somebody to talk through it with you, whether that's sitting down in a chair or what we like to do is let's just start with a phone call. Let's just talk it through so we can understand what's going on and then get you a solution that's just special for you. Because the reality is every person is different. Client one might have credit card debt, client two might have credit card debt also, but their job, their future, their past, where they're going, what they have, when those things are different, and they're going to be, then maybe the path we take is different. And there are so many things we can do, but we can't start brainstorming those things with you until we know all about you. And so just read all of the articles, read the internet, right? That's something, right? But it's not the true first step of stepping out and saying, I need to talk to somebody. I need somebody who can be in my corner and work with me to get out of this problem.
Mr. Luke Homen, thank you so much for taking the time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to All About Bankruptcy, your legal path to relief with Luke Homen. To connect with Luke, head to convenientbankruptcy.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review this episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.